Alright guys, so it's now come out that evidence that could have exonerated former President Donald Trump from any wrongdoing during the January 6th Capitol riot was purposely hidden to get him in trouble. Now, this could possibly be counted as a massive win for Trump, something that he really needs this year. Now, as we all know, the events of that day, they still rippled throughout the years as it's being used against the former president. Members of the January 6th committee, they're now being called out because critics are saying that they left out some very vital information. One of these people being called out is former Republican Representative Liz Cheney. Hey guys, before I get into this, all I ask is that you take 1 second, drop a quick like for the video. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for sharing this video on Facebook and sharing it on Twitter. I totally appreciate you guys. This definitely helps us get the truth out here. So Liz Cheney was found to be a hero by Democrats as she scrutinized everything that happened back then, pinning most, if not all of the blame on former President Donald Trump. Now, a recent article released by the Federalist shows that Cheney may not have been as honest to the American people as she could have been. So Cheney, together with the committee, falsely claimed that they did not have any ounce of evidence to support that Trump had called on for 10,000 National Guard troops to help keep the Capitol safe prior to the riot. The problem is that not only did Cheney know about this fact, but she was present during the interview. Newly released information shows that an early transcribed interview that was conducted by the committee proves that the White House under President Trump at the time did in fact ask for National Guard assistance. So Deputy Chief of Staff Anthony Ornato's first transcribed interview with the committee was back on January 28, 2022. The interview had Ornato admit that he had overheard White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows push Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser to request as many National Guard troops as she needed in order to protect the city. Now again, Cheney was in the room when this interview was being conducted. He further testified that President Trump himself suggested 10,000 National Guardsmen would be needed in order to keep the peace at the public rallies and protests scheduled for January 6, 2021. He added that the White House was very frustrated with Acting Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller's very slow deployment of assistance on that day. But instead of letting the public know about these facts, the committee decided to hide the interview from us. Not only that, but Ornato was drawn in the public eye as someone who couldn't be trusted. Cheney herself questioned Ornato's testimonies, especially the one where Trump supposedly hurt officials who were in his motorcade. Of course, Cheney has tried to support her argument. In an effort to not look like she's biased, she often pointed critics to the government publishing office website. She says that everything that the people need, transcripts, documents, exhibits, and the meticulously sourced 800 plus page final report, they're all there. The problem is that less than half of the 1,000 interviews that the committee claims to have conducted are even in this website, which means that they've hidden transcripts from the public. Transcripts that could very well absolve former President Donald Trump of any wrongdoing. Republican Representative Loudermilk, chairman of the House Administration Subcommittee on Oversight, he said that the committee did this on purpose. There's no question about it. The idea, according to him, is that the testimony didn't go with their predetermined narrative, that Trump was indeed an insurrectionist who wanted the Capitol to go down. Loudermilk and his committee is now reviewing the work of the J6 committee as it's been accused of other unethical behavior at the expense of accuracy. Now, some analysts think that it's insane that committees have to do this to one another just to get the truth out. The investigation will also confirm if any collusion with other Democrats was done in order to prosecute a political opponent. Now, some critics of the Trump administration, they're saying that this is further proof that he knew a riot would happen on that day. But this doesn't really match what Ornato testified to. So Ornato says that the call for 10,000 additional National Guardsmen, they were due to the fear that left-wing groups would clash with Trump supporters. Tension was already high and Trump knew that a single match could start a fire. This is what they're saying. This was done as a precautionary measure, not because the former president expected a riot. He expected Democrats and Republicans to be at odds with one another, whether it was him or Biden that won. Mayor Muriel Bowser declined the offer to add guardsmen and instead opted to only have a few hundred members of the National Guard. She also made sure that none of them were armed and that they were not engaged in domestic surveillance, searches, or seizures of the U.S. persons. Many criticized Bowser for doing this, saying that she either lacked the foresight to see what was going to happen or she knew beforehand and she let it happen anyway. So this interview from Ornato also revealed that even though Bowser declined, the White House under Trump still requested a quick reaction force out of the Defense Department. They were out at Joint Base Andrews if ever Bowser needed them. them. And as we all know, she definitely needed them. The minute that the riot started, Acting Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller was contacted to deploy the force that the White House had prepared. Now, the only problem was that Miller chose not to act fast enough to make an impact on that day. It's been said that Miller produced excuse after excuse as to why they couldn't help fast enough, even though their main goal was just that. So Liz Cheney hid Ornato's testimony from the American people and said that in her report that Trump never gave any order to deploy the National Guard on January 6th or any other day for that matter, nor did he instruct any federal law enforcement agency to assist. So what do you guys think about that? Now, in line with this, Trump continues to win as most of his cases are still being held back. The biggest political victory so far for Trump is the fact that the Supreme Court has agreed to consider whether he is immune from prosecution for interference in the 2020 presidential election. The decision is being seen as a gift and a lifeline for the former president who faces legal battles on different fronts. Now, this has not sat very well with Special Prosecutor Jack Smith. So Jack Smith insists that any legal case that Trump is in has to move on as soon as possible. The fear for many of these people, which includes Fani Willis, Nathan Wade, and Letitia James, is that Trump is voted into the White House before he's sent to jail. This is the one thing that they want. They want Donald Trump in jail before he can lay another foot inside the White House. But of course, it really doesn't explain that the Supreme Court unanimously voted to hear Trump's immunity case out.
The justices agreeing to consider whether Donald Trump must stand trial over charges he plotted to overturn the 2020 presidential election. The former president has claimed that he's entitled to absolute immunity because he was president at the time. Well, a lower court has rejected that. And today we learned that the highest court in the land, acknowledging the historic importance of this case, will hear arguments the week of April 22nd. That's a little less than 2 months from now.
The Supreme Court set the stage for landmark arguments in 2 months. Its order tonight says it will hear arguments the week of April 22nd into whether, and if so, to what extent, does a former president enjoy presidential immunity from criminal prosecution for conduct alleged to involve official acts during his tenure in office.
We've never been here before. We've never had a president who was criminally charged. And they're asking a fairly straightforward question. Does a president enjoy absolute immunity from criminal prosecution based on official acts?
The decision delays indefinitely the trial involving Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. With a Supreme Court decision not expected until May or June, it could endanger chances to hold the trial here in Washington before the 2024 election.
Now, some critics feel as though it's only a minority of justices that are favoring hearing this case. There are those who say that Justice Clarence Thomas may have cast the deciding vote, even though they attest that it's a conflict of interest. So Clarence Thomas's wife, Ginni Thomas, supported Trump in saying that Biden shouldn't have been deemed as the president during the 2020 presidential elections. Now, both of them insist that their relationship has nothing to do with how they do their jobs or who they support in politics. However, the same could be said for pretty much anyone else who's placed in the Supreme Court. But still, those who do not want Trump back in the Oval Office, they argue that this is a clear case of bias, something that they don't hold President Joe Biden to since they see him as a completely fair leader. Do you guys feel the same way about this? All of this information coming out this year is for sure going to be sending shockwaves all the way to the end of 2024. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to keep working for you guys to inform you guys on what is going on around us. Before I go, I want to thank you all for hitting the like button. Thank you for sharing this video, and I'll see you on the next one.